Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast today. John, Bart, Simpson. What's
Good
up,
morning.
brother? This is
Good.
long overdue.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a
Well,
good morning.
I feel like any morning we get to talk shop, catch up a little bit. It's been nice. I just saw you a couple weeks ago down in Texas, I think.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember where I've been over the last few weeks, but I think it was in Texas at the Joey D. You guys were down there on scene, training associates. You guys were down there in full force, as you always are, supporting the Joey D Foundation and providing training for those weekends. And it was nice to see you. And I finally said to you, this is long overdue. We got to get something on the books. And
Cool.
here we are a few weeks later. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I try to follow the podcast as much as I can and everything else. And a lot of my good friends have been on here. So,
Well, you know what it is? It's good people, right? When we keep
yes.
good company and we run in circles of people that make us want to be better. We nobody wants to hang out with losers. So
Exactly.
you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, I don't, and that's one of those things for me with this project in National Fire Radio is I get to hang out with really cool people that bring a lot to the table. So
Yeah.
I'm usually the dumbest guy in the room. So this is exciting for me to sit back and listen to what's happening. So anyway, let's hop into it, man. I mean,
Okay.
there's so much about you. Over 40 years in the fire service. Your career started out in Pennsylvania. You ended up in Florida. You chased probably the weather, I would assume, and so on. But you've had quite a colorful career with a lot of milestones throughout. And I don't even know where to begin other than maybe just chapter one, where the foundation of roots came from, and
Yeah.
then we can go from there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said, I started out in Pennsylvania, 20 miles south of Pittsburgh, a department called Peters Township. We were the first in the area. We had red and yellow fire trucks. So everybody either called us the Ronald McDonald Fun Bus or um, the hamburger machine or something
Yeah.
like that, because it was Ronald McDonald colors. But yeah, we were paid on call department, started out as volunteer, paid on call, couple career guys. And like you said, we surround ourselves with people who are like-minded. And as a young age, I started there when I was 16,
Mm.
and we had a really strong chief. He passed away about 5 or 7 years ago, but they were into training, all the guys in the training. They had a smoke divers program there, which predominantly most of the guys from my department ran.
Okay.
And so, it's like on a weekend, hey, grab your gear, we're going to go burn a house, or we're going to go train here or whatever. So at a young age, they got me. I got bitten by the bug, if you say.
There's something to be said for that, where there's weekends where you have a group of guys that are just all in, and on the weekends all they want to do is grab their gear and go and train, or get to pull the trucks out and train in their bay space or whatever.
Yeah.
There's just something about that. It creates this culture where everybody wants to be a part of it. Nobody wants to miss anything.
Right. Yeah, it was just the young group of guys. Of course, probably with your department, you had the old guys who were against the young guys, but all the young guys, we just forged ahead, stuck together.
It's
And,
always that way.
we were in West Virginia, Ohio, everywhere, going to training, and it was just a blast. And I kind of
When was this, John? Or like how long ago was this?
That
What,
was
80s?
1982.
82.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me, though, that there was that much training opportunity outside your own zip code back
Yeah.
in 82.
Well, there was county fire schools all over
Mm.
the southwestern Pennsylvania. Our county had one, and the next county had one, and then we go down to West Virginia, down by Morgantown, and they had a rescue school down there. But every it seemed like in the summertime, you're always getting. Back then, there was no email or anything else.
Right.
You would get a flyer, and okay, hey, let's go. We're leaving Friday
Just
night.
roll in. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There was no like RSVP or like,
No.
you call, leave a message on somebody's answering machine, right? But you just
Right.
literally just showed up with whatever you needed and you went.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I love
And
that.
we had a blast, and just like I said, that's what got me bit by the bug, is doing all that training, having the chief that we had then, and then his son-in-law became chief, and everything else. And we were always a very aggressive and progressive fire department to begin with, and I guess that's kind of where I got my start into the training, because then I ended up being the training captain there before I left for Florida. I was in charge of like all the gear and everything else. So, I got fortunate that the fire chief, prior to me leaving, trusted in me a lot and gave me a lot of responsibilities, which kind of helped me grow up a little bit. And, you know,
I That's a big part of it. I think early on when we recognize younger guys that have something a little bit different about them, right? I mean, we can have all the gun ho guys in the world, but there are always those one or two guys that stand out that we think can take on a little bit more. And it might be in a supporting leadership role before they get to that position to be, say, a company boss or something. But it's the guy that takes over the turnout gear, the guy that takes over purchasing, the guy that knows what's necessary. What are we doing? Dancing? Is that your phone ringing?
yeah, somehow I did something and it's connected to my computer. So,
No, it's all good. No worries. This is the joy of live podcasting, right? So it's no big
yeah.
deal. But what I was saying is that, we always look for those guys that kind of have just a little bit more that I think, can come along and help an organization grow and build by putting their time in doing those other things. And I know, obviously, through your time with all the training academies you've been involved with, on-scene training, logistics and support is just as important as the guy that's in the front and leading.
Oh yeah. And Aaron's given me the responsibility, and they named me down in Louisiana the down the bayou operations manager.
There you go.
So,
Yeah.
anytime
But there's
we get
something
down
to
there,
that. It comes from your early age, right? Because early
yes.
on, you got bit by the bug, and all of a sudden you find yourself taking on these other responsibilities other than just riding out on runs.
Oh yeah. And, like I said, the fire chief, he was the career chief, and but like on weekends and stuff, all the chiefs stuck around because they were afraid there was a call and nobody to run them. It got to the point where he felt comfortable enough that we got divided into. I was a captain, and I had a lieutenant under me, and we had duty weekends and stuff like that. And
Right.
I kind of look back now, a 21-year-old kid in charge of a township that's 26 square miles and I don't even 25,000 population then, kind of laugh
I
at it,
don't,
but
it's funny, right? With maturity comes clarity. With maturity is experience, and all these things. But people are gaining experience in many different ways. And even back in the 80s, like we have organizations that are run by mid 20-year-olds, some of the busiest volunteer fire companies that have live-in programs and so on.
yes.
I don't, age matters only in certain areas. And I think when you're dialed in and you're doing it for the right reasons and you have some experience behind you and it's a busy shop, those 20-year-olds can take on those older positions, no problem, no questions asked. I believe it.
Yeah, I kind of look at, and I had, as a young age, I got to go down to PG and ride a couple times, and I try to explain to our guys when I was on Osceola, I'm like, these guys are running 20 calls a day, and 3 or 4 of them are working fires, and they're like,
That's
oh
right.
my God, we're running 25 medicals and all that other stuff. But
it is an interesting conversation. You only know what you know. And if you don't get out of your borders, like guys in my department would have an absolute heart attack if they knew how other departments ran. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a very good way, that these other departments run with minimum staffing, yet they can do the work of 7 guys because they're well oiled. They run all the time. They're exposed to work, and they're all young kids who are just all in. And that's where I think guys get the formula gets skewed, is that if you don't get out of your home turf and go see how other people are doing it, you stay closed-minded and you don't have an understanding of how else it's done elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's detrimental.
Oh yeah, and that's like I did the truck portion of our new hire program, and that was on Friday. I would give them a big long talk and good luck and all that, and that's one of the things that I stressed. I said, now in Florida we're saturated with conferences, and I said, get out of here.
Yeah,
this is just little old Osceola, and we know the Osceola way. We need people to get out and broaden their horizons and bring stuff back and help build this department. And it's a large metropolitan department now. I think there's 370, and that you got a lot of them. They're just there for a paycheck, and I try to instill in what was instilled in me when I was a kid. Get out, do training, go out and surround yourself with like-minded people. Things might be crappy at work, but you got good friends, and you can go release some of that extra energy your frustrations out at the training grounds or with your friends or whatever who think the same way as you.
Yeah, and if you're not being challenged, you're not feeling growth, you can go find it there. I mean,
Yes,
not everybody, we all supposed to work or volunteer for the best fire department in the world. But reality tells you that there might be better shops elsewhere. You're just stuck where you are right now, or you don't have the opportunity to go there. And so,
exactly.
but now, I mean, Bart, their opportunities are abound. I mean,
Yeah,
if you think about like how much you travel just teaching and attending different conferences and lectures and all these things, I mean, opportunities are more prevalent than they've ever been.
exactly. It's just amazing. We go back to, and that's kind of diving into the Fools thing. That's kind of
Yeah.
one of the reasons that we kind of started the Fools, because there
Yes.
wasn't a whole lot going on, and the pride and ownership and training is the key points of the Fools, and that's why we kind of started it to build that culture that back then in '95 we felt we were starting to lose. So
So I had Walt Lewis on the show many
yep.
months ago, and he was on. It was a great conversation back and forth. I'm supposed to do a part 2 with him. I got to get him back on. He loves to go, so we
Yes.
need more time together for sure. But you were a part of that, and let's just jump in on this. I mean, we're bouncing kind of all over with your career, but the Fools was a very big part of it back in the mid '90s, right?
Yeah,
And you were one of
95.
the founding members, right?
Yep. One of the founding, and again, it was the whole we all the whole group of us surrounded ourselves with each other. We were like-minded. As you can see, we like leather helmets.
I love
And
it.
that was kind of, we all had leather helmets and everything else. And we'd all get together, excuse me, at Mike Gilbert's house on a Saturday afternoon, and hey, that's where kind of where the Fools thing started. And then we're kind of having a Fools get together, and then it went to a Fools convention in downtown Orlando with 60 of us from Central Florida, and it
Right.
just grew from there. But it's that whole surrounding yourself with like-minded people, and keeping things positive, and get out and train and everything else and be the best as you can.
Were you starving for more? Like I know early on you talked about, you guys traveled back in Pennsylvania and you would go and find training on weekends and you had this group around you that pushed you to want to go and travel on weekends, right? Now
Yeah.
your career moves down the line a little bit more. Were you finding, I mean, I have to believe that the initial ideas of the Fools was because everybody was starving for more and they were looking for the same guys who are always getting together all the time to kind of push it forward and to keep their sanity. Was that really what it was really all about?
I truly believe it was. And then,
Mm,
as we said, coming from Pennsylvania, where we had fire schools every weekend and everything
yeah.
else, and coming down here, and you went to minimum standards in EMT, and, some of the community colleges might have, classes going on, but it was nothing like the fire school weekends. And, I missed that drastically, and Walt came from New Jersey. So,
Right.
the same type of thing. And the other guys are pretty much from Florida. So they didn't experience what we experienced. And then getting them to go to FDIC, because I was part of FDIC back then, um, really opened their mind, and like more fuel for the fire to get guys fired up. And this is where we need to move the Fools on and spread the word of the brotherhood and training and everything else.
I love it, man. Like
Yeah.
I think about it, and I think there's a lot of similarities between what the Fools did and why I kind of started National Fire Radio. Right,
Mhm.
was like finding this network and building a community of people that kind of share the same core mission and values. Right, and
Yes.
so that not only is good for my soul, but it also holds me accountable. Right, like you guys starting the Fools, and now you take this backyard barbecue and weekend training and you formalize it into a group that all of a sudden grows pretty quick. It catches on. That tells me
Yes.
there was hunger for it. People were starving for what you guys had created.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then with the connection with the FDNY guys,
Mm,
FDIC, and I can still remember the first party that we hosted in the basement of the Hampton in Indianapolis. We got Walt ended up getting a couple kegs donated, and you go down in the basement, and I think there's only supposed to be 50 people in there, and we probably had 350.
No kidding.
And it was I had to go use the restroom, and I couldn't use the one downstairs, so I came up the steps, and there was a line out the door, down the sidewalk. You make a left and down the sidewalk, waiting to come to the fool's party. And we ran out of beer, and we're trying to get more beer. And when I walked back in, it was a roar that you couldn't explain. It was brothers getting with brothers and talking, and brotherhood and fellowship, which was that'll always stick in my mind. That I was just overwhelmed at that, to see the amount of people that were there and what was going on. And then it felt like a basement fire. I knew what a basement fire was. The guys from Florida don't. But I stood at the top of the steps, and you could feel the heat just coming up the steps.
Yeah. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for the conversation when it was all done, and you guys stood there and looked at each other and just went, "What the hell just happened?"
Exactly.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
It was a long night, but like I said, it was a memorable night for me to see that and to really get the Fools going. That's probably the biggest thing that we had. But people were coming in waves to see us and talk to us and want to know about the Fools.
How do we do it? What do we do? What's this look like? And all of a sudden, you guys are like, "What did we create?"
Exactly. And I don't think FDIC or Indianapolis knew what was going on either. And then with the change of the guard there and everything, that they kind of hey, these aren't some rogue guys. These are guys that we want to be connected to because they're movers and shakers. And
I love that, because I think like where we are today, I think about that was in the mid to late 90s, right? I mean, that's when the Fools really started going.
Yep.
And it's a movement. And I think it took a subculture and made it a culture. And, subcultures are talked about behind closed doors, and it's things that people do and they don't really talk about it a lot. And you guys were willing to take a chance of putting what you were doing and what you recognized as important to not just yourselves, but to the fire service. You guys were looking to share that. And so you took this subculture, this backyard barbecue, and you formalized it, which you recognized people were hungry for it. And I think that's what's happening in the last few years with all these conferences that have popped up, where it was once a subculture that banging doors and thumping doors on the weekend and getting out and meeting brothers and sharing a beer and telling stories and communicating with guys from all over the job, from all over the place.
Yes.
We now have taken that subculture, and I believe today that is the culture. And that if anybody that's not on board with that, and there's plenty that aren't, and there's plenty of departments that don't support it, but I truly believe that subculture that we all whispered about is now at the forefront and really taking over the culture of the fire service.
Oh, definitely. And I think that we did have the Fools did have a little part in that. And
yes,
but it just happened in front of our eyes, and we didn't know what was happening, and then we'd have some conventions and everything else. And it was just amazing. Like we said, you stand there afterwards and go, what the hell did we just do? So it was something good. We didn't break anything or hurt anybody,
But you guys laid the framework and the blueprint for how many Fools. I mean, I don't expect you to know how many there are today, but I know they're constantly still popping up.
Yeah, there's about 8,000, I think, is from our last meeting, close to 8,000. And we've had
8,000. Hold on, 8,000 chapters?
8,000 members.
Members. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. But I know some states have multiple chapters in some states.
Yes. And then you have like the New England Fools, where they kind of incorporated multiple chapters and made one big chapter. But, the bigger states, I think there's 4 or 5 here just alone in Florida. And, Florida's such a big, long state, and there's, we try to keep them aligned to like an hour and a half drive or whatever. We look and somebody says they want to start a chapter, and then we look and see where the next closest chapter is. And, they're an hour and a half from each other, an hour, try to get them together. And
are you still involved?
Yeah. Not active too much, but pretty much on a weekly basis, either talking with the e-board or Ben or or somebody, and so yeah, we're getting a phone call. We have our own group meet chat and everything else going on.
The OGs. You're like, what happened to that simple backyard barbecue we used to do? Right?
Exactly. Exactly.
You're like, man, this got away from us.
Yeah.
We don't get to do what we used to do, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for it. I think the foundation from which you guys laid, built quite a machine, and it's representing the core values of what we're all starving for. Not everybody, like I said before, has that on their home turf.
Yeah.
And if you guys can formalize that in being a member, I spoke the other day, true story. I spoke the other day in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and this woman came up at the end and she goes, where do I find this? I'm not getting this. I'm not doing we're not getting this where I am and all these things. And, one of the guys turned around and said, join the Fools. Just looked at her and said, join the Fools.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're going to get it.
Yeah.
If you're starving for it, if you're hungry, you're here at this conference today and you're looking for more of this, join the Fools.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked over and I was like, yeah, I'm like, that makes sense. And that's where I think the formalization of it matters, because it gives somebody a place to go.
Yes.
People that are starving don't always know where to go to eat, right? And
right.
so, the formalization of the Fools gives people a place where they can look up something that aligns with what they're looking for and they can go find it. And I know, like, I was up in the Northeast, so that was New England Fools. Rusty Ricker and his crew up there, they do unbelievable job
yes.
With their Fools network up there. I think they're, one of the larger chapters,
yes.
and they are fully committed to the mission. It's fun to watch.
Yeah. I try to get up there as often as I can. It's been a while, but we were in Louisiana the same weekend as this past conference that he had, and there was an all-star lineup there. That's for sure.
Always, every year, man.
Yes.
Every year, Rusty does a great job with his crew for sure.
Yeah.
But talking about Louisiana, there's a lot of different things that you're involved with. You work with on-scene training, Aaron Heller, and obviously yourself, and then the crew, and so on. But you teach other places as well. So training has always remained a core focus for you, right?
Yes. Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about why, because obviously your foundation, pushed you to learn and grow on the weekends and training, but it stuck with you.
Yeah. And like I said, going to the weekend trainings when I was a kid, and then, again, the whole thing stems around being surrounded by people who are like-minded, or get your juices flowing, I guess.
Yeah.
To get interested in it. And, with going to the conferences and FDIC and everywhere that I've had the privilege to travel, it just keeps fueling that. I love to teach. I love to, I go on vacation to ride fire trucks and fight fire, and
But what is it about teaching though for you? From going from the student, which, listen, we're all still students. I get it, right? We're always learning from one another, picking up things here and there, and so on. But what is it about teaching for you? What is it that that kind of fuels you to get up on during the week and drive and fly and go somewhere and teach and train? What is it?
I think a lot of it is driven by what the kids are taught in fire school. Because as we know, especially here in Florida, they're just like pumping out people from minimum standards, and it's IFSTA way. And, we know, not to hash the IFSTA thing, but that I have a joke. I said, when we get there to do training, I said, we're going to have an IFSTA book burning party, because all that crap goes out the window, because I want you to be able to function properly, safely, and accurately on the fire ground. And most of that stuff they teach you in that book is to help you pass a test. And so I'm kind of driven by the street smart tactics. Mike Champo kind of started that phrase or whatever, but that's the way I look at it. I want them to be able to function and operate on the fire ground proficiently, not go, well, the IFSTA manual told me that I have to stand behind the ladder because it's safe. Well, we've proven that it's not safe standing under the ladder, and things like that I want people to be, if they're willing to learn we'll sit there for hours with them and do whatever we need to do to get them up to the next level. And I think that's part of our success from the OSTA model, is that we're always trying to make people exceed or excel in what they're supposed to do. And I'll throw out the whole, as you know, we do a lot down in Thibodeau. I looked at it. I think we've gone on 10 years down there with the Thibodeau Fire Department, and to watch them change throughout those 10 years is just, it's actually more fuel for me.
Yeah.
I told him when we were down there a couple of weeks ago, we did hoarder houses. We filled up their burn building with all kinds of trash and had them doing evolutions and all that. And just listening to their radio transmissions, the way they're reacting, and they're actually listening to what we say. You go to some of these classes, oh, I have to be there to get my AA degree or whatever, and they forget what you said when you walked out the door. But you go to the places exactly like Thibodeau and a lot of the places that we go to, they want to be there. They want to learn. They want to know what we know and to make themselves better. And, listening to the groups, I've got 15 different apps for notifications for fires and group me and all that other stuff. As soon as there's a fire, whatever, I'm listening to the radio. And, it just, listening to the way these departments function and the people that we've interacted with for so many years kind of keeps just fueling me, because you watch that growth and go, hey, it really does pay off.
Consistency.
Yes.
There is such a disconnect today between our fire academies and the street.
Yes.
There really is. And it's growing. I feel like the divide is getting larger and larger.
Yes.
That the gap is growing between the two. And it's frustrating to watch, whether it's on my own home turf, kids that are going to the fire academy come back and they literally have no idea on any street smart tactics or way in which, it's done. And the problem is, I want to go down this road a little bit, so just work with me here for a little bit. I think what's really interesting to me is the checkbox and the IFSTA checkbox, and we're getting our people through, because the only way you can truly judge, supposedly, academia is through testing, right?
Right.
And it's got to be standardized testing that is fair and equal across the board.
Yes.
Problem is, firefighting is not fair and equal. We'll start there.
Exactly.
But the issue becomes is we're pushing people through. And then the idea comes, well, when you get back to your fire department or you get back to your fire company, your guys are going to work with you and make you the fireman that you're going to be.
You're right.
The problem is there's a lot of kids coming out of the fire academy going to really shitty firehouses.
Yes.
And there's nobody there that is giving them the time or the necessity that's needed for them to grow into a firefighter that has some street smart and experience.
Right.
And that is a massive disconnect, and it's a system that is pushing people through with check boxes and then not checking back on them to see if they're getting the additional follow-up that they're needed. And so what's frustrating for me then is we do become a minimum standard fire service.
Yes.
And unless you're willing to get on board with that subculture that is now becoming the culture, you might not have the opportunity to do anything more than just have minimum standards.
Right.
I think that sucks. And I think that I don't think most people want minimum standards. Like, I think, kids going through the fire academy want to be better than they could possibly think they could be. They're just not given the opportunity to find their way. And so they become minimum standard people.
I totally agree. And I refuse to teach minimum standards anymore, just for that, because it's not, 90% of it is not practical on the fire ground. We're just pushing students through. And I can speak for Florida or anywhere you look across the country. They're starving. They need firefighters so bad. And they're just lowering the standards. And you check this box, you check this box. And then I remember from the department where I retired that we used to have to argue with the fire chief because we wanted to do a truck company class or an engine ops class or whatever. He goes, well, they have minimum standards, and he teaches minimum standards. And I kept telling him, we're going to be as a minimum standards fire department. one day we're going to be challenged, and our minimum standards are not going to meet expectations, and something is going to happen, whether it's one of us or civilians that were sworn to serve. And that's the other thing in the academies. I don't think they're pushing that portion either, that we're here for the people. We're not here for us. If that kind of makes sense.
I mean, I'm sitting here just listening. I'm dialed into what you're saying because I agree with you 100%. It's an unconditional job.
Yes.
We don't get to pick and choose, right?
Right.
And for us to pick and choose what type of training we want to give these kids or these guys and girls coming through the fire academy, because we just have to check some boxes and then move them along, and all of a sudden we just want to push them off to be somebody else's problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've just heard things about a local training academy here where I am, where they don't want to burn on training nights for the volunteer departments. They're making it more difficult to have access to the academy, or they can't schedule instructors, or they can only do, certain little type A, burns, like all this bullshit that is added layers of nonsense that get in the way of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And I think what really pisses me off about the whole thing is that everybody in the fire service should be in it for the fire service.
Exactly.
Like, always pushing it forward, making it better, doing more.
Yes.
I understand it's a job and instructors need to be paid and academies need to keep the lights on and all that shit. But why are we not putting out the best possible product we could put out?
Right.
I just don't understand that. Are you going to send your kids to a crappy college? Are you going to send your kids to crappy schools so they can get minimum standards in life, so they can come out of school and work at a menial job where they can't produce and give a living to themselves and have medical insurance and maybe a 401k? No, you're going to give your child every single opportunity you can for the best schooling possible. Why are we not doing that for our firefighters?
Exactly. And, he kind of used one of the Alan Brunacini phrases, Mrs. Smith doesn't care who you are. What Mrs. Smith cares about is when you show up, you know how to put her fire out. You know how to get her out of the house or her family, and everybody goes home safe. She doesn't care. She thinks when you show up on that big red truck that you know what you're doing. And the other, I'm trying to use the other analogy. Would you rather have two idiots in a pickup truck show up with the booster line?
Right. Right.
Or
you're 100% right.
Yeah.
You're 100% right. The public doesn't see it and understand it. We do. Right. We see it every day. But the problem is, it seems like I said, that gap is getting wider and wider.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a real misconnect or disconnect. And the problem is that we take for granted that kids get to firehouses and then they're going to want to push themselves to be better. But if our fire department only promotes minimum standards, why do you think the rank and file are going to want to pick their game up and do more than what you require of them?
Right.
Right. We have to create an environment and foster an environment that pushes people to want to be better, to reward people that want to do more and be better. Yeah. But we focus too much on the bottom end. We focus too much on the minimum requirements instead of the maximum achievement.
Yep.
Frustrating.
And I'm trying to think of who came up with the phrase, but if you don't raise the bar, you're going to keep tripping over it. And I think that's where the fire service is now, that we're not raising that bar. We've lowered it enough where, every time we go to take a step that we're tripping over it, and we're not, we're back to day one again.
How do we change that? I'm not asking you to solve the world of firefighting training, but you've been doing this a long time, and you've probably seen this as a roller coaster. It ebbs and flows, ups and downs, right?
Yep.
And I know that, what you're doing, getting out there with the training company and doing these conferences and sharing your street smart knowledge and experience, all that matters, but you're not hitting the masses. We need a mass correction in what our focus is in fire academies.
Well, and I think that's, not to get out on a whole another rabbit hole, but I think
go wherever you want.
The leadership of the fire service today. We, like you started to mention, and I know I had friends of mine that were on the NFPA 1403 committee. There were chiefs on there that wanted you not to have live fire at all. Nothing, no burn buildings, nothing, blah, blah, blah. They wanted to end live fire training. I know a fire chief or training chief now who every year they're required to have a burn. He lights 2 pallets on fire. They sit in the room and, okay, you're done. You get out. They do no firefighting. They do nothing with it. And it's a very, very busy department in South Carolina that's doing that, but their training chief is just holding them back. And I don't understand the culture of the fire chiefs, that, a lot of them haven't come up through, they've come up through the ranks in their department, but they've taken the, expressway around, I guess. And, they don't understand the brotherhood and caring about people and expecting them to do better. They show up and go, oh, everything was, yeah, you guys did a good job. You did a good job. No, we didn't, chief. We burned the damn house to the ground. Well, nobody got hurt. Well, yeah, that's true. But there's people standing there, their life savings, their kids' clothes are in there and everything else. We go, oh, we did what we could. We're not expecting more, and we're not being challenged by the leadership of the fire service. I think it's hard to describe, how what the major problem is, but I feel that there's a lot of disconnect between the chiefs of departments, and you talk to anybody across the country, everybody has their problems, and that's never going to change, but it's how the problems are dealt with. And you watch some of the real fire service leaders who promote training and push their guys. They expect them to come off the truck with their gear, tools in their hand. Boom. They expect the best for their community, and they're the strongest fire department and crews that people have, whether it's at the district or battalion chief level or all the way up to fire chiefs. I know, some pretty good fire chiefs that, they're good with morale. They know their guys. They try to make the department the best they can instead of a minimum standards, and, lack of planning too.
It's never a question of the good fire companies, because the good fire companies are put together from the top down and from the bottom up.
Yes.
They're always put together well because they won't tolerate minimum standards. They won't tolerate people that don't fit their mold because they have a strong culture put together and in place. And so losers don't stay in firehouses that push them to be better.
Right.
The only people that stay there are people that are willing to check their ego at the door and make themselves better. I think one of the biggest problems, Bart, and I'd love some feedback on this when it comes to training and so on, is the no culture, the fact that no means control. Guys that get into these positions, when they don't want to push boundaries, push their people to be better, they're holding their people back. It's because they're uncertain about their own skills and abilities or their experience and knowledge, and they don't want to be shown up. And if they're in a position of training authority, a lot of guys get to the training division, they're the worst guy for the job.
Oh, exactly.
But it's a safe place to be. But they're not going to promote anything more than minimum standards, because now they're going to be making themselves uncomfortable because they don't belong in that position. Yes. And so they're going to hold back battalions. They're going to hold back departments. We need all-stars in the training division. We need some of the best firefighters that are on the streets in our cities to be the guys running these academies. But unfortunately, they don't want to be there. Right. A lot of them do not want to go there.
And part of it, I think, is that atmosphere of those people who are minimum standards people, and they're holding everybody else back. And they look at it, why should I go down there and get beat up and be told, no, you can't do anything. You can't build props. You can't do this. Why don't I just stay on shift and I'll do my, my own guys and everything else? And
why don't we just say yes?
Yeah.
I talk about this in my program. Why aren't we saying yes?
Yeah.
Why don't we give the people all the opportunity in the world? Say yes. Let them try it. Let them build a prop. Let them build a program. Let them bring in outside teachers. Let them put together a culture. Say yes.
Exactly.
If you're a no guy, it's because you lack the ability to let go of control.
Yep.
So saying no doesn't let any growth happen. We need yes.
Exactly. And, the departments I look at that have committees, and I've, talked to some of them, and no, I'm the, special ops chief. I'm just ordering what I want and blah, blah, blah. And in departments that function with committees and guys get input or buy-in in their departments, I think help relieve some of those problems. And then it goes to the next level, that those chiefs who are like in the training division that not only know minimum standards, oh no, we can't afford that. No, we can't afford that. And they won't even look at it. But, um, if you have a little buy-in, and that's what, I got beat up a lot. I had one chief, he goes, every time I hear you talk, you're trying to turn us into the goddamn Indianapolis Fire Department. I'm like, well, number one, they're a pretty good department, and they get a lot more fires than you've ever had in your career in 2 days, And I'm like, why aren't we looking at how other people function to make us better?
That's right.
And
what are we afraid of?
Yeah, yeah, and whether you call it plagiarism or whatever, but some of the use what works for other departments, and there are departments
100%.
like us out there that do a little.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly.
If it's already happening elsewhere, let's go see how they do it and adopt it in a way that works for us. We can put our own spin on it, but why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
It's the people that aren't willing to walk out of their zip code. And I talk about that all the time. It's frustrating.
Yep.
If you only know what you know, you're narrow-minded. You have no room for personal growth, let alone the growth of your fire department.
Exactly. It was funny because I walk into some of the meetings and, okay, how much money do you need now? And what do you want to buy and everything else? And,
But you didn't sacrifice what was important to you,
correct.
Right? When you consistently go back and ask for more money and ask to introduce new programs and ask to build new props and ask for upgrades at the training academy, ask for new programs, you're not compromising your own morals, ethics, and values. You're trying to consistently push it forward. That is what we need. We need constant pressure.
Yes.
From the firefighters and the people that can make difference, the line officers. We need constant pressure on our administrators, our managers, our command staffs. We need constant pressure on them to know that we're not going to let up because they keep saying no.
Exactly. And that kind of goes back to, we call them kids now, but, instilling in the younger kids, if you get them, we called it orientation or whatever, while after they get out of fire school and they start on the job, but, we've got to orient them to our department and all that and get to be able to pass along. That's why we kind of stress that get out of our department, get out and see what other people are doing, get them, because, people are like, yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. Where did you get it? Where'd you come up with it? I said, I didn't come up with it. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time to get the tip. And when you go to these places, do that. And I think that's fertilizer for them to grow. If they get out there, then they're going to be the next Barts going and hounding the fire chief for new nozzles or, extrication tools or, gear or whatever, because they're seeing what's going on.
And that's on the big level. You could just break that down to yourself, right? Here we go again. You're a popular guy this morning.
I know. Everybody and their brother, of course.
The other part of that conversation is we can scale that way back down. It doesn't have to be on a massive training division level.
Right.
This could be on a personal level. You find yourself to look for something more outside of your own zip code. You might find that there is a different way of stretching, a different way of forcing, a different way of laddering. There's all these different things that you can find, or even just simple things like, how do you hold your tools?
Yeah.
Like, this is something that I want to explore more. I don't think we do enough teaching on how to carry and wear our gear.
Yes.
And how we operate, how we use the thing. Everybody teaches thermal imaging. Who teaches how to carry it on your gear? What does that look like? Do you wear webbing? Do you use a retractable? How do you scan a room? Are you on your belly? Are you on your knees?
Right.
Like all those things, how do you carry it? Where do you carry your chocks?
Yeah.
How do you carry your irons? Like, do you like tape? Do you like those things are the little things that you can pick up on the street when you're willing to get outside of your comfort.
Yeah.
And you can go out. So it doesn't have to be on this large scale. It can be on a very individual scale that is just these little things that can help you just be a little bit better at the job that you love.
Yeah. And I think I kind of use the example of, I think one of the sayings on Thibodeau trucks is deeds, not words. And I kind of, early on, just by being around the people that I was, or going and riding places to watch other guys, we go to a fire alarm, I got off with my stuff all the same time, the same way every time. We go to a car wreck, the same thing. I have my gear on, this and that. The tools always came off. I don't care if it's a fender bender, but that mindset. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, when we had that house fire with somebody trapped, or we had to force the door or whatever, I already had that down pat. And, sometimes, I kind of preached it for a while, and then, sometimes just shutting your mouth and doing it. And I watched, like, people wouldn't wear their gear. And I always, I'm a big gear guy. I'm not a safety Nazi, but, put your damn gear on. That's your job. And, I would do the same thing. So the next thing that I see them, well, they're putting their gear on more. The next thing, we go to a call and I'm like pointing at the tool. I wouldn't say anything. I just point at it, and like, hey, you just to remind you, take that tool with you. And, but, just those little actions sometimes, we can preach for so long, but if we don't walk the walk, what we're preaching, then that all goes out the door,
The whole preach thing, right? People are like, you put something up and they're like, preach, let the people in the back row hear it. I want just the people right in front of me to hear it.
Yeah.
And I don't preach from a place of being on a pulpit. I mean, I'm preaching from a place, I don't even like preaching. What I like to do is share what I've learned, right? And I think that that's really important. I think it gets lost sometimes, and I'll be honest, full transparency, I struggle with it at times. I mean, consistency is difficult, especially when you're not going to fires every day and you're going to the same bullshit medical runs, the same bullshit fire alarms, carbon monoxide alarm runs, right? You start to lower your guard. You start to get complacent, and it is very difficult, even for the most disciplined, to not take a shortcut on your everyday.
Yeah.
It is a very hard thing to do, and it's easy to say. It's easy to say we need to have our tools, we need to be buttoned up, we need to have SCBA on, whatever it is. It's easy to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's the consistency in the trenches every day to follow through on that message.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, previous experience too, I can remember back in the volunteer days, we got a call for an auto accident in the parking lot of the shopping center. Well, the accident ended up being in the shopping center.
In the Home Depot. Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And into the bakery area. And that was a dry cleaner, so that was even better, But,
sure.
The older person, just their foot got caught on the accelerator and right through the front door. And, just as we're pulling up, they're telling us, well, the car's in the building. Like, that changed the whole world.
100%.
And like, oh shit, this is the real thing. It's not just, grandma got a boo-boo being bumped in the car in the parking lot,
Yeah.
So
it all matters. And I just think that, I just want to be, very clear that everybody struggles with this.
Yeah.
And it's not like, two guys sitting here on a podcast talking about how important it is to be buttoned up and ready to go. And it is important.
Yeah.
But we recognize that the reality of it is a constant battle with consistency to deliver the same self you are every single day in every situation. It's very challenging.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's what you do with that, right? I mean, it's the same with getting out of your zip code and learning something more. It's what you do with it. It's easy to do in the moment. What do you do with it after the fact?
Right. And I kind of always, in the back of my head, I had it that, there's people bitch about, in Florida it's hot. Yes, I understand that and everything else. And I hated putting my gear on in the summertime when it's 95 and 100% humidity. But I always did it pretty much. And the way I looked at it is there's people that are going to a whole lot more calls than we are in their gear and a whole lot more fires. A lot of people can't comprehend going to 2 and 3 fires at, a tour or a shift or whatever.
They say they want to.
Yeah, until it's time to do it.
That's right. Exactly. Until number 2 or 3 rolls around.
Yes. Yep.
Takes a certain breed, right?
Exactly.
I mean, and that's the thing. And I think it's, when you have a good culture in place and it's a department that challenges one another to be the best that they can be, it's those departments that truly challenge their people. Minimum standard departments are going to get minimum services.
Yes.
It's the companies and fire departments that push their people to the maximum effort, the maximum abilities, push them and give them every tool an opportunity to be better. And those are the guys that are going to come buttoned up, and those are the guys that are going to come off the rigs going to work.
Yep.
There's no doubt. And it shows on the fire ground. We all go to fires or wrecks or any type of call with A companies and B companies.
Exactly.
And it's, who do you want to be? What team do you want to be on?
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Yeah, we have a joke. Everybody has a B shift. So
That's right. That's right. I mean, and so there's something to that. Right. And I think that it comes from personal and from within.
Mm-hmm.
And, to circle back, the administration, command staffs need to create those environments and give those opportunities and tools to our people. But it also comes from the people.
Right.
Don't sacrifice your morals, ethics, and values. Don't allow somebody to tell you how you want to be or operate. Don't let somebody, extinguish your flame if you want to be better.
Exactly.
There's opportunities more than ever today to go out and be better.
And kind of, we have the leadership or the lack of leadership or understanding there at the leadership level, of what it takes to be a good firefighter, and they're holding people back. But take a next step down is that, you have battalion chiefs and district chiefs that want their guys to be the best and have high expectations for them. So they're out there training with them, and you can go all the way back down to the station or the crew level too. You get a good crew together and they're always training, and where I'm very proud of where I came from, the guys that I worked with before I retired and everything. A lot of times we didn't even have to say anything to each other. They kind of knew what I was going to do. The lieutenant knew what he was doing, blah, blah, blah. We knew everything. And, we worked as a team, but even though the leadership didn't always support us, we kind of supported ourselves in the firehouse model or the crew model to get out there and be better. There's times that we've got there and guys are sitting there trying to get dressed, and boom, we run right by them. So we're getting in there first, or you take the line out of their hands or whatever.
Damn right.
Feels
good when you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be competition within companies. There should be, because that promotes growth. That promotes betterment. If you got companies that don't give a shit if they're first or third due, then they don't want to be there. Every company wants to be first due.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. So, I mean, I love this. This has been a lot of fun. Let's get back a little bit, though, in the foundation, right? So for you and your upbringing, you found yourself going to Florida.
Yep.
And then you get on the job down there. You go, I believe you're in one or two departments in Florida, right?
Yeah, I came down and I went through minimum standards. I didn't get hired right away, so I went back to Pittsburgh for 6 more years, and then regrouped and came back, and ended up getting.
What was the appeal of Florida?
My aunt and uncle lived here, and I came down for vacation. 2 things happened. Number one, I liked the weather. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They were outside of Orlando, and then
those Pittsburgh weather, the winters.
Yes.
Right?
I missed the snow, but I don't miss the cold. I can't take the cold anymore. Right. But and then it was right around Halloween. So in downtown Orlando, they used to block off Church Street, where there used to be a place called Rosie O'Grady's Church Street Station. Yeah. And so me and my buddy, we stopped at Orlando Station 1, and we're talking to them, and they're like, well, you tell them you're a fireman, they'll let you in for free. You'll probably have to get a drink for free or whatever. Are you guys riding with us or what? And I'm like,
nice.
What? So we ended up staying there for like 3 days and had a blast. I did one of my first extrications there and everything else. And I guess that kind of I looked at the Orlando thing, and I really liked Orlando and Central Florida and the way it was growing back then too. So that kind of drew me down here to Palm Bay. So
that's all it takes, man. Yeah. It gets a hold of you, right? Yeah. You find a place that gives you a little bit of a hook.
Yep.
And you go all in. That's exciting. And then as you progress, I mean, I know truck company is important to you, right? Yes. You're a truck company guy. You love truck company culture, truck company work, and so on. So I have to think that on the training side of things, that was a focus for you.
Yeah, it was. And I guess it kind of goes back to Pennsylvania thing. I had guys that, always had books from FDNY, the truck companies and FDNY. And, they were going to go take the test, and I hope I get on a truck and all that. And back then we just had a telesport,
Right.
and I tried to operate it like a truck, but it wasn't the same. But
Yeah, not the truck itself.
yeah,
I mean, the positions are there,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people, they get hung up on that, but you can run a truck company from an engine.
oh yeah,
You just don't have the aerial device. But other
exactly.
than that, the positions are the same.
Yeah. And then when
Yeah.
I got to Palm Bay, they had a 100-foot Grumman tower ladder that they cross staffed. So if it was a commercial building or whatever, they would jump off one of the engines and we would get on that. And it was funny because when I first moved there, I had a scanner on and everything else. And if I wasn't on shift, let's listen to the scanner. And they had a fire right down at the semiconductor plant, right down the street from the firehouse. But the so they were out on another call, so we didn't get the truck out. So I went to the station and ended up somebody else showed up and we brought the truck to the fire. And I'm like, this is pretty
Yeah.
cool. I got pictures of me up in the bucket putting water on the roof. And then
But isn't it crazy though how we value a truck for commercial buildings and not for residential, right? Like it was such and that still happens in different parts of the country where guys cross the floor depending on what type of call it is.
yes,
But like ultimately, like why are we devaluing the abilities of the truck
right.
or the engine, right? Like all of a sudden the truck trumps the engine if it's a commercial building versus a residential home. Like I've always chuckled at that mindset.
And the truck culture here in Florida, it's starting to pick up. Orlando was always very truck strong, and
Yeah.
hanging around with Stallings and Kenny Ireland and all that. They were truck guys, and that just kind of, I guess, helped spark my interest in learning about it. And it's kind of always what I wanted to do is be on a truck. And so
Well, you're tall. You tall guys always get the truck assignments anyway.
yeah. So yeah, and we actually, when I worked for Palm Bay, we had a fire in the middle of the night at a strip mall, and I ended up going and getting the truck and bringing it, setting it up, and then going to the roof.
Yeah.
And I'm standing up there, and the roof should have been opened up. The guys were taking a beating inside, but the chiefs were down there. No, 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 don't cut any holes. Don't cut any holes. Just tell us what it looks like up there. I should have just revved up the saw. I didn't hear you, Chief.
Yeah. I mean, we got fire through the roof because I just cut the hole.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we have up here.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you see a lot of? I mean, I got to think in the '90s, 2000s, 2010s, like there had to be a lot of growth in Florida. I would assume.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. And it's
so then the
20,000
fire service had to grow with them.
Oh yeah, and that's
Yeah.
I guess kind of the part of we're getting the effects of that now with the rapid growth, because you get hired and they're pushing you to be an engineer, they're pushing you to be a lieutenant, pushing you to be a battalion chief or whatever, and trying to push you up the line. And I think some of the fire service, the chiefs and things like that are not getting the experience because they've been pushed so hard to get up the line. And maybe that's their end goal, but that with the growth,
Who's pushing?
with the growth as fast as it is, you have to have those people in place to make the department function or semi-function.
So the expansion of the department to represent the municipality or city or jurisdiction they're covering is growing at a pace that they're just pushing from within.
Yes.
Because they need people to cover spots and promotions.
Yes. And the department I came from over by Kissimmee, we were always treated like the stepchildren. Number one, we were union. They didn't like the union. And we were always last. They're probably still 4 stations behind from 20 years ago, and I mean, it's exploding everywhere over there, and even in the county that I live in, that nobody can keep up with it. And they're finally starting to give some money to try to get it caught up. Money's flowing pretty good now, but you're trying to catch up from 20 years of growth.
Are you watching a lot of people leave as well?
Yeah, and depends on where they might be leaving. I just had a conversation with somebody that the kids aren't staying as long as, they're, I guess, losing interest in it or whatever, or it's, they need immediate satisfaction and they're not getting it. So.
Well, Yeah, I think an interesting part of that conversation is kids today have more opportunities than they've ever had
Yeah.
before. They can sit home and sell sneakers online and make more money than what the fire service can give them.
Right.
And I think that the old stance of it's a good job, solid paycheck, blue collar, you're serving your community, you get a pension, you get benefits, it's a good job.
Mm-hmm.
In the pecking order of life these days,
It's not important.
it's a lot of work compared to where other people can put focus. And so what fire departments have to realize is, and administrators and cities and command staffs, it's a different way of doing things today, and we have to adapt to it in a way. And I'm not saying lower standards. I'm not saying,
Right.
I'm not trying to paint a picture for what needs to be done. But we have to understand that kids today have much more opportunities than they ever did before. And so the fire service does not look that appealing to them.
Right.
It just doesn't compared to what it used to be.
And they're starting to slow down a little bit. A lot of the departments are starting to their pay comparisons, but that was always a big thing. Like where I worked, that we would hire these guys, but they would come from South Florida, and they wouldn't get looked at down there until they had a year or two on the job, and then they walked right in the door. So
Yeah.
they would come up here for a year, do their thing, and then they already had their applications in down south because
Right.
number one, they lived there. Number two, the pay was a whole lot higher than what we have and everything else. And that, they've got their friends down there too. And they're pretty good departments in South Florida. So
There's this conversation about loyalty. There's no loyalty anymore. Kids will bounce around from department to department and all this and that. But, I have to say this. It's you got to offer them a hook to stay.
exactly.
They have opportunity. And we can point fingers and say that they're not loyal. We can point the finger at them and blame them or their generation or all this bullshit that we want to conjure up. But ultimately, we got to look at what are we doing to keep them?
Yeah.
What are we doing for them to go all in on us? Because any fire department expects their people to go all in.
Yep.
Do the departments go all in on their people?
No.
Usually not.
No. And I think
Usually not.
and I kind of we're turning this a whole full circle of turning it back to training. And again, it goes to the company level, the battalion level, or the department level. And, I guess gratification or getting these kids to go outside the department, get them other training, I think helps spark them to stay within their department.
100%.
Exactly. And, if I take 5 guys from my department and we go to a class and everything, and they come back and they start spreading that word about, yeah, that training was great. We got to do this and we did that. And, lines over ladders and everything else. And they come back and tell them, and the next trip we're going on, we got 10 guys going. And I think those are the 10 guys that are going to stay with your department. But they have to feel a little bit of, lack of better terms, a little bit of love when they come back, for the chiefs to be open-minded that they went and spent their own money for training and time trades or, cover, off of work. And, you don't even want to listen to what he has to say, what he learned, and you just beat him down.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then you wonder why they don't want to stay.
Exactly.
You wonder why they have a bad attitude.
Yeah.
You wonder why they're not loyal to you.
Exactly.
Because you treat them like shit.
Yep.
Treat them like a human being. Be kind. Be empathetic. Ask them what they know. I promise you, some of these guys, like myself and my kids, right? If I need help with a computer or my phone, they're the first ones I go to. And you know what they do? They bring me tremendous value and speed up something that I would have spent hours trying to figure out. They showed me in 30 seconds.
Exactly.
So we value them for that type of stuff, but we won't consider hearing what they have to say about a training weekend they went to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll tell you why. Because they're not confident in their skills and abilities, and they're threatened by a younger kid pushing themselves to be better.
Exactly.
Because more people than not these days are not pushing themselves.
Yep.
They're okay with the status quo. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't disrupt the apple cart, bro.
Exactly.
It's bullshit,
Yep.
Bart. It's bullshit.
Yep.
We got to do a better job. Departments have to do a better job. I can speak to the volunteer side. Obviously, you can speak to the career side, right?
Yep.
But the thing is we need to do better. It's not a generational thing. We want to complain and blame the generations. They're different. Every generation's
Exactly.
different. Every generation is different. What the hell do you expect? We have to adapt. If we're not willing to adapt and pick them up and make them a part of the process, you think they're going to be loyal to you?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. They don't need you anymore. They have opportunity. I love watching these departments come into conferences and literally promote themselves.
Yeah.
They're there bidding on applicants, telling everybody how great of a fire department they go to, how many fires they go to, how great the culture is. Like, when you can go out and promote your department, it's like a recruitment drive on steroids.
Oh yeah.
Those are departments that want the best, and they're going to get the better candidates because they're putting in the time to create an environment and a recruitment campaign that represents the type of people they want.
Yeah.
Those are going to be the departments that win.
Exactly. And and you look at people who, leave from one side of the country to go to the other side for a fire department job because they know the culture. They know what's, they're going to get fires, they're going to do this, and they're going to get training is going to give, they're going to get their training. They're going to, have like-minded people, and they're a busy organization. And you see people pack up and move across there, and sometimes it's better pay and sometimes it's not as much pay, but it's, what makes you happy and what drives you to be a fireman or a firefighter. Yeah.
Well, it's money was always a big driving factor. I think today money's not as important as experience.
Yeah.
People want to be a part of something. They want to be a member of something that is making a difference. The generations today are all about making a difference, whether it's politically, whether it's environmentally. They want to be a member of something that's making a change, making a difference, making an impact. They might check a few extra dollars at the door to be a part of something that makes them better.
Right.
The experience matters. They're more fulfilled. These are things that we have to explore and look at, but we have to provide an environment that allows for that growth. That's it.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the other thing. You get me started down a whole other bandwagon.
Yeah, that's okay.
But, the guys that, they're pounding their hand on the table. The goddamn union's not getting us enough money. They're not money, and then I revert back to being around or knowing departments that go to 3 or 4 working fires a day, and they're not making that much. They're making less than we are. They don't have the good insurance that we have and everything else. And I know people always want more and want to be better, but sometimes I guess, if you start out and you've given your kids everything, they don't have to work for it. And then they're always going to want, well, I want more. I want a new truck this year, and I want this and that. Dad, are you going to buy me this and everything else? And that's kind of where some departments are at. That again, the guys are there for the job. They're there for the paycheck. I can go fish for 2 days while I'm not on duty, and but I want more money. And then they're turning around. Well, I had to get up 5 times after midnight last night.
Yeah. But it's those conversations fester and people focus on the money when there's nothing else to focus on.
Right. If they're busy, whether they're, busy training or running calls or whatever. And, we always use the analogy that, after a fire, morale is like through the ceiling.
100%.
With the exception of the people who don't want to be at a fire, but the rest of us, like, I'm like amped up, I'm out there cleaning tools, or I want to do something, and everybody, the whole crew's out there, and what could we done better, or what did you see this and that, and kind of just it's just so amazing after a good fire how morale changes. And if you get a rash of fires, you're really lucky.
But you can keep that going. I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe you can, because not everybody's going to fires every day. Not everybody's going to fires every week, right? And so the thing is, though, you can keep that morale high by endorsing that type of culture.
Yeah.
And it takes work. The problem is guys don't want to put in the work. And if we're not willing to put the work in, things are going to die. Culture is going to die. People are going to look for other things to do because they don't want to be there. Guys don't come on callbacks. Guys don't show up at the volunteer house. Well, it's because you're not giving them a reason to.
Right.
even as busy as they are in their lives, second job, third wife, 15 kids, whatever it is, they're still going to pop in at the firehouse if you give them an opportunity to be there and they want to be there. If the environment is conducive and they don't want to miss out, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Good fire departments, career or volunteer, the guys stay grounded and a part of it because they don't want to miss out on what's happening.
Exactly.
That's because it's a good environment.
And I'm going to throw my shameless plug out to Thibodaux Fire Department.
Do it. Yes.
They're
I've been there. I've seen it.
And we laugh at the way they kind of operate. You know, they got the drivers that go get the trucks, and then everybody else drives to the scene. And you see more. I've never seen so many red and white LED lights before in my life. But they're getting, during the day, they're getting 25 guys for a house fire. I'm not even getting 25 guys with my paid department, you know?
This is a volunteer department in Louisiana.
Yes.
I mean, this is, this is not like suburbia USA.
No.
I mean, this is, yeah.
And
there's something to be said for that.
The chiefs there, it started as we get into the history and everything else, and with the past chiefs and the current chief, that they keep promoting that. And, when we go down there for, they call it Fire School Week, we do 4 nights in the fall from 6 to 10, we're getting 50 and 60 people show up. That's amazing.
Awesome.
They need their hours for ISO, but there's they know they need to be there and they want to be there and they want to learn and everything else. And I promote them as much as they can because they've got a good thing going, and they've got a good culture. And like I said, the chiefs keep excelling and keeping them involved. We laugh because when we're there on Saturdays and Sundays, we have breakfast. Then they have we get lunch and all that stuff. And then one of the chiefs has a dinner for us and everything. And the guys that were at class will come over, or the officers or whatever, and we'll all hang out and talk. But that culture that is in Thibodaux I've never seen it like that anywhere, career or volunteer, but they definitely have it set and it works for them.
It is exciting to see fire departments that do it right.
Yes. And
they exist, and guys that are in departments that don't know what that's like, I promise you, go seek it out.
Yeah.
Go find another department that offers those values. I'm not saying to jump ship. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But if you need fulfillment and you're not getting it in the house you're in, go pursue it elsewhere. Whether it's a conference, a training weekend, a ride along in a different department, whatever it is, get that excitement, bring it back.
Yeah.
I promise you can get people to buy into it. You can. It just takes work.
Exactly. Go to the Anne Arundels or PGs of Maryland, and the new gym.
There's opportunity.
Yeah, they're running a couple fires a day and everything else, and some of the cultures you got to sort out some of the bullshit that goes on just like everywhere else.
Of course.
But go and get that experience and everything else, and that's when I had the luxury of. My buddy works at the Allegheny County Fire Academy, but he used to drag me along when I was a kid. Come on, we're going to Harrisburg to ride for the weekend.
I love it.
It was back before Squad 8 was Squad 8. It was Engine 8 in the hood. Of course, I was there. It was the white cloud. We didn't get shit as soon as I walked out the door.
There you go. But as soon as you're 5 minutes away, right?
Yeah. And
yep.
So, we're going down to PG or in Montgomery County and stuff like that. I'd just go down there for the weekend and
and this is just locally.
Yeah.
I mean, where a couple hours drive in any direction, right?
Yep.
And you can do that anywhere you live. I mean, seek out, the departments that are hustling, the departments that are going to work. Go befriend them.
Yeah.
Be a part of it.
Exactly.
See what they're doing. Get excited about it. We're supposed to enjoy this.
Right. Best job in the world.
Fuck yeah. I mean, you're part of the founding member of the Fools, Bart. Like, you were seeking more and wanting to formalize that excitement that you guys have. And just talking with you today, you're smiling, you're laughing. It's important to enjoy what we do. If you don't enjoy this, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly. And that, again, down here, it's the job culture and everything else. But, we kind of, when I first came to Florida, I got to tell this little experience. When I first came to Florida and said, I was a volunteer up there for, 9 years before I came down here. And they're like, oh, well, volunteers are nothing down here. And, you had
I
nothing.
love it.
Then they tried hammering me on we were the second, and I believe in the country to have a smoke divers program. And
Right.
they're all running around with their Florida smoke divers. I said, well, I've been through the Pennsylvania smoke. That doesn't count. I'm like, bullshit. We were doing, we weren't going in there trying to find nuts and bolts on the floor, cooking ourselves, but we were doing buddy breathing. Before buddy breathing, you stick the tube in your mask. And, we were doing RIT scenarios before RIT was even there. And, you're telling me, I said, I was there for like a year. And I said, you know what? By this time last year, I've been to 10 working fires. And I haven't been to one working fire. Granted, I'm only working one every third day, or if I go into buff or whatever. But, I'm like, you can't count. You got to look. It's different up north. And, look at your department, look at Wyckoff and all that. All those departments that I'm familiar with are in Pennsylvania that, they're busy, and they're running fires and everything else. But, just because they're volunteer up there, they say it doesn't count,
Yeah, I mean, we can discredit anyone. We got all-star career houses, and we have terrible career departments. We have all-star volunteer departments, and we have terrible volunteer departments.
Yeah.
It comes down to the people and the culture and what you're willing to do.
Exactly.
And I just think that this has been an awesome conversation, man. This is good. We didn't even get to anything about you or your career. But you know what? We tackled a couple things today that truly, I think, answer a lot of what people are looking for. People are struggling.
Yeah.
And Bart, I think that through your career and upbringing through the fire service and your foundation from which you've built your own career and training on, you have a lot to share, and I'm glad you're out there doing that because you're making a difference, and that's that subculture that's now the culture.
Yeah.
It's built on the back of guys like you, for sure.
I love to do it, and like I said, I got bit by the bug early on, and I'm so thankful for that, I had a fire chief that, engaged us like that and pushed us and, instilled that culture in the department. And that department's still, very well-known, very well-trained department and everything else.
They're still running those Ronald McDonald
yes,
fire
they
trucks?
are. So
there's a department in New Jersey that does it too, Schooley's Mountain.
Okay. But,
yeah, red and yellow.
Yep. I
pretty
think
gnarly.
they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's different, right? They stand
Yep.
out. They stand out. I wanted to say this. You brought up a really good point, and I kind of wanted to wrap a little bit, but I want to touch on this because I think you're the right guy. You keep talking about those early days in Pennsylvania, and so there must have been mentors and people there. You talked about the chief that promoted your growth, that they gave you that hook. I think about today in the fire service how important it is to grab those kids that come through the door and give them, work with them. Take time out of your day to give them those tools that you needed when you first started. How important was that for you?
now that I look back, that shaped my whole career.
Yes.
And
yes.
Them taking the time to, I was a pain in the ass. They would tell me that because I was always there, always wanted to go on every call. I wanted to do this, wanted to do that. And, the chiefs, they would get pissed off at me, but they would work with me. And as I kind of reflect back and watch or look now that, with that happening, I got more and more responsibility, and that's how I got, kind of where I am today. And, sometimes we go, when we retire, that was a big shock, but, think back of everything that I've got to do. I've got to travel around the world, either teaching or, full stuff. I've got to meet people that I never thought I would. And, you kind of reflect back about, man, I wish half these people that I know or half these people that you talk to, that I could take them back 20 years and show them that this is the way the fire service is and or was then. And this is why we need to keep up that culture and that training.
100%.
And it's just amazing that, I look back and surrounding myself with those chiefs that started me. Bill Ennis was the first chief and then Bob Pasega, and then Dan Coyle. He had to put up with me for a long time, and a very good friend. And he coached me. Sometimes we disagreed, but he got me where I am, and kind of the attitude that I do a little bit. But and being around like Mike Dugan, Mike Champo, and some of these other guys.
You imagine if these guys? Could you imagine if these guys didn't give you the time that you needed?
Yeah.
Right. I think about that all the time. If we don't go all in on our people when they come through the door, we don't know who can bring what to the table until they mature and grow up through their process in the fire service. How dare we be the ones to determine if we don't want to go all in on the people coming in?
Right.
We could ruin somebody's potential career. They could be one of the best firefighters or all-stars of your fire department, but because you're not willing to put your own time in to that next generation when they come through the door, we might lose these people.
Exactly. And I'll kind of throw this out too, reflecting back on the Fools. I'm sure Rick George, and
yeah, absolutely.
So Rick still tells his story today that he was ready to get out of the fire service. He was actually almost ready to end his life years ago, until the Fools chapter took him in, and he joined and got involved in the Fools. And he still will tell you today that saved his fire service career. It saved his life, and it just it made him a better fireman, a better person, and a better father, and everything else. That
and imagine if we abandoned him.
Yeah, and there's so many people
right?
abandon. You try to you get frustrated with the kids these days, and you're always on their phones or doing this or doing that, and take the extra second. Like you said, we may miss them and lose them, and they go be insurance salesmen or something. But
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I agree with you, man. We got to protect the integrity of this job, and it starts with the people.
Yes.
That's it.
Yep.
It's that simple. You and I were given a foundation from which we can grow and do what we do today. It's because people opened doors for us. People helped us along the way. They mentored us. We had people that, gave us their time.
Yeah.
We need to do that today for this next generation. I feel that we're lacking on that. And I just want to spread that word and that message, because I think that matters. I think we need to do a better job at recognizing that as much as things have changed, there's still certain foundational things that have remained the same. It's just we have to go all in on it. We have to be a part of the process, and we got to do the work.
Right.
That's it.
And one of the things, just don't discount people because they might be from a major department or something. I used the story that, again, we were down in Louisiana, way down the bayou. A kid came from New Orleans. He was on a squad there, and I'm like, well, maybe he should be teaching this class if he's on the squad in New Orleans. Right. And we were doing forcible entry, and we had the door and all that other stuff, and then we did through the locks. Had a whole bunch of locks laid out and how to get into them, how to pull the lock cylinder out, all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm preaching to the choir to this guy. He's a busy department. He's on a squad, which is kind of their I guess superheroes or whatever.
Rescue company.
And I'm like, he's not going to learn a thing from me, and just talking to him. And he really got into when we were doing through the lock. And like a week later, Aaron and I got this message from him, and it says, "Hey, I just want to let you know that we used the through the lock method on in New Orleans on Bourbon Street for a gas odor. They were getting ready to break out the window on the door to go in, and he said to the battalion chief was standing there, and his officer was standing there. He goes, "Hey, I learned this. Let me see if this little trick works." So he whips out his vice grips or channel locks and undoes the lock cylinder, reaches in with a screwdriver, opens the door. They go in like gentlemen. Yep. And he said the chief stood there and goes, "Wow, that's pretty cool. Where did you learn that?" Yeah. And that was those little things are big accomplishment or big pats on the back that we don't expect, I guess, or they help with the fire of teaching. When you do know you make a difference, whether you see it or somebody tells you they did.
Big or small, but I'll be honest with you, all the small things are incremental and they add up to big things. And it's not, it's not every day that you have an aha moment where it's like, whoa, I didn't, it's these little things. The little things matter, right? I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
John, thanks, man. I appreciate you joining me today. We're going to have you back because, I know we can. I know we can. And I try to keep it. We're at like an hour and a half almost already. And I usually do about an hour only because I take into consideration the listeners and so on. But, I want to say this. It's not every day I have conversations with guys where we can just wrap and go and so on. And I just want to say this has been a fantastic conversation. Yeah. And I'm just literally just scratching the surface with you. So we'll definitely have to get you back soon and continue the conversation. But we went down some roads today that I think were important.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And I think that your insight into those topics will make a difference, and you'll impact some people through that message. Yeah. So I appreciate you, Bart. Thank you very much, brother.
You got me all wound up now, so I'm going to be wound up for the rest of the day.
For the rest of the day. Yeah. Well, listen, that's what this is about, right? I mean, we got to get excited.
Exactly.
We got to get people excited about this. We got to fire people up, and we need people to then take this message, go off. So do me a favor. When we're done, go call somebody you haven't talked to in a while, because that's what I like to do. I try to do that once a week, twice a week, call somebody in my phone I haven't talked to in a couple months, a year, 2 years, and just call and say hello and say, hey, I was thinking of you. I think that matters.
Definitely.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. John Bart Simpson in the sunny state of Florida. Thanks for joining me, buddy. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off the podcast. I'm going to come right back to you, okay? Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Do me a favor. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for joining Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.